At 9:47 p.m., in the hum of an empty floor, my coworker leaned so close I could smell the burnt coffee on his breath and whispered, "Tonight, they're going to take away your project." I believed him, and that belief is the only reason you're reading this. If you've ever felt your stomach drop at work and thought, "Am I crazy, or is something about to go very wrong?" don't scroll. This is exactly that night, minute by minute. I'm a senior product analyst at a mid-sized SaaS company that sells a data platform to regulated clients. Translation: if we mess up, auditors don't slap our wrists. They freeze contracts. My job isn't glamorous. I'm the person who writes down what was decided, who approved it, and which key fits which lock. I don't make speeches. I keep receipts. The office was the version of quiet that swallows your thoughts. The motion sensors had given up on detecting life, so the lights over the far rows were dark, and only the blue glow of the build server lit my corner. I'd been finalizing a release candidate for a board demo in 36 hours, the kind where everyone smiles while calculating renewal numbers in their heads. My badge still smelled like the rain I ran through earlier. My coffee tasted like pennies. The HVAC hummed above me in a thin, tired whistle, and the rubber feet of my keyboard squeaked because of the dust I kept meaning to wipe off. Evan showed up like a ghost and a friend at once. He's that coworker who knows when to ping a link, when to compliment a commit message, when to send a "you good?" at 11 p.m. His hoodie sleeves were pushed to his elbows. His eyes were red in a way that read as loyal, overworked team player. He didn't sit. He angled himself between me and the aisle, shoulders hunched, voice low. "They're calling it a custody transfer," he said. "VP's on his way with IT. They'll mirror your repo, revoke your admin, and take it from here." I heard it in the war room calendar. You weren't invited. It's a terrible thing to measure how fast trust forms against how fast fear grows. In 2 seconds, I scanned his face, the way he pressed his lips after war room, the half-tilt of apology that people only practice when they want to be believed. I wished immediately and stupidly that I had gone home earlier, but the build was here, and my name was on the change log, and the renewal was a 7-figure domino leaning on these binaries. "What time?" I asked. "Midnight," he said. "Maybe earlier if security is free." The cursor blinked inside my release checklist like a metronome. I looked at the things only I look at. The approvals column, the ticket numbers, the compliance notes no one reads until a lawyer asks them to. 2 weeks ago, I'd started a pilot that no one cared about, an add-on to our standard change control. It auto-hashed commits, captured approver IDs, and sent a nightly digest to a legal archive address the general counsel once mentioned in passing. People rolled their eyes at me. We already had Git history, they said, and policy docs were for auditors, not builders. But I'd kept it running in the background because that's what I do. I keep the boring things alive. Evan shifted his weight like he wanted to leave and also wanted me to stop him from leaving. "Look," he said, "I don't agree with this. I told them it's bad optics to cut you out. I think you should push your branch to master now so they don't mess anything up." That was the first off note. He said push to master, which we don't say anymore because we renamed the branch a year ago. It could have been a slip. It snagged in my head anyway. The clock on my monitor jumped to 9:52. I opened the build pipeline and watched the green checks ripple down the screen like falling beads. The regulated connector, the one that needed a procurement-controlled audit key called Data Bridge, sat in yellow, waiting for the last sign-off. That key wasn't a file you could just copy. It required an approval path through procurement and the CFO. Weeks ago, I had opened the ticket for that path, knowing it would take time. I had the email thread with dates and names and the little approved icon from the CFO's assistant. The key would release at launch, not before. That was how we kept the client's legal terms intact. That was my job. "Okay," I said, and my voice came out steady, because 8 years in regulated software will train calm into your bones. If they're doing a backup, fine, but I'm not pushing anything until the last QA gate is recorded. If they want it, the pipeline is green except for data bridge, and that's by design. Evan nodded like the reasonable one in a bad situation. I just didn't want you blindsided. I believed him enough to prepare. I exported my release notes to PDF and dropped them in the compliance drive. I checked that the pilot hashing service was still forwarding to legal. I rotated the sandbox tokens that had expired that morning and documented the rotation. I added one line to my checklist. Midnight backup requested by VP, awaiting change record. Because timestamps matter when people pretend they didn't know. Past 10 p.m., the floor of an office turns into a church. You hear the elevator cables. You hear your own chair. Somewhere between the hums, I remembered the first time I'd been told to be more collaborative. That was after I flagged a vendor library with a known vulnerability that the VP wanted in to save time. HR framed it as style coaching. People need to feel you trust them, the HR VP said. I said I did. I just trusted the log more. At 10:31, I saw 2 calendar blocks I wasn't in. War Room Final Lockdown and Mirror in Custody. Both included the VP, IT, and, because of course the universe was tidy about it, Evan. He had told me he wasn't invited. The invite said otherwise. I felt that small, precise click of something sliding into place. Not rage, something harder. The kind of clarity that turns your breath from shallow to even. He pinged me on Slack. They might move earlier. How much earlier? I typed. No response. If this hits a nerve because you've had a helpful coworker who always seems to know where the wind is blowing, save this. The next decisions are the only reason this story ends the way it does. I checked the door to the server closet down the hall. The badge reader glowed orange. The cleaning crew had gone. The windows showed the parking lot lights smeared by drizzle. And 2 floors down, the guard at the desk leaned back and watched a small TV in his booth. The office smelled like carpet glue and the lemon cleaner the night crew overused. In my pocket, my phone vibrated. The pilot audit sent its nightly digest early because I ran a manual trigger. It listed the day's commit hashes, approvers, and this part is what made me keep it. Branch rule changes with the associated SSO IDs. Nothing unusual. Yet. At 11:12, the elevator chimed. I didn't get up. The VP's footsteps announce him before his face does. He is white-bread charismatic, the kind of person who tells a joke while your deadline bleeds out. He came with an IT lead I like and security because late-night backups apparently require a guard to stand by like a witness. Redundancy, the VP said, not even a hello. We're mirroring the repo to our gold master, just in case something happens to your machine. It's in cloud repos, I said. My machine isn't the single point of failure. He smiled like we were playing tennis, and I'd returned a good serve. All the same. He moved behind me, looked at the pipeline, and said, We'll take it from here, with the casual theft of someone who has practiced casual theft. I minimized my personal desktop out of habit. He didn't notice. He waved at IT. The IT lead winced an apology with his eyebrows and started the mirror process from his laptop. Security stood 3 paces back, thumbs hooked in his belt. I didn't argue. I just opened my checklist and wrote another line. 11:14 p.m. Mirroring initiated by IT at VAPI's request. I am present. I watched the percentage climb. I watched the connector sit in yellow, waiting on a key I knew would not exist in their copy. I watched Evan hang back near the doorway, hands in his pockets, eyes somewhere near the floor. He looked sorry and small, and I realized how perfectly that look sits on a person when they need you to keep trusting them. When they revoked my admin on the main project, the email hit my inbox with the same dull chime as a calendar reminder. Your role has changed. It's impressive how bureaucracy keeps its tone neutral while it pulls the ground under your feet. The copy finished at 11:39. The VP clapped once, a quiet little pat of his palms. Great. Go get some rest, he said, already owning a thing he did not build. We'll drive from here. I'll finish notes, I said. Then I'll head out." He nodded, already walking toward the elevator. Security followed. Evan lingered like it's a kid after a school assembly, waiting to see if the principal needs one more chair moved. "Thanks for the heads up," I said without looking at him. "I'm with you," he said. "You know that." I didn't answer. My fingers hovered over the keyboard. The audit pilot sat open in another tab like a small, unassuming camera. I triggered one more digest to legal with the subject line, "Change control variants during release lockdown." Attached the mirrored event and the role change alert. Not dramatic, just a post-it on a door that would matter later. The clock rolled toward midnight. The build server exhaled a soft fan noise. My coffee had gone cold enough to reflect back a crooked version of the ceiling. I closed my laptop, slid my badge into the side pocket of my bag, and listened to the office breathe the way buildings do when no one is talking. Then I opened the laptop again, added a final line to my notes. Status green except for data bridge, pending release per policy, no further action, and saved. I didn't go home. I sat there long enough for the lights to give up on me, and in the dark blue of two monitors, the whole situation looked simpler than it felt. They had what they thought they needed. I had what I always keep. The proof of who did what, when, and why. The first time Evan ever saved me, it was something tiny. A year ago, he leaned over during a sprint review and whispered that the VP didn't want to hear about test coverage, only features. I cut that slide last second. The VP smiled, the demo sailed, and everyone clapped. Afterward, Evan clapped me on the back and said, "See, I've got you." It felt like teamwork, but looking back, that was the seed. Trained me to see him as an ally, someone who'd always steer me just enough to survive. The pattern repeated. He'd warn me not to bring up compliance in front of the CEO because he hates detail. He'd tell me which JIRA ticket to close because they only care if the dashboard is green. He'd slack me 5 minutes before a stand-up with, "Don't mention the delay, let me cover it." At the time, I thought he was just protective, smoothing rough edges. Now I know he was rehearsing my silence, teaching me to swallow the things that made me look slow. And I was slow, deliberately, because regulated software is a trap that only looks safe until the wrong client lawyer asks the wrong question. We don't move fast and break things. We move steady and notarize everything. I don't chase dopamine hits of green check marks. I chase signatures. When the VP pushed for velocity, I was the friction. My value was the pause button. And in a company obsessed with speed, pause buttons look like dead weight. 3 months before that night, I flagged a vendor library with a known vulnerability. The VP wanted it anyway, cheaper, faster, temporary. I refused, citing policy. HR called me in. "Be more collaborative," they said. Collaborative. A nice word for compliant. People need to feel you trust them. I nodded, went back to my desk, and filed the vulnerability report. Quiet rebellion through paperwork. It became a joke in the team that I overdocument. Meeting notes with timestamps, who said what, who agreed, who disagreed. Decision logs with JIRA IDs. Screenshots of approvals. To everyone else, it was excess. To me, it was insurance. Not against mistakes, those happen, but against memory holes. The kind of holes where your project disappears into someone else's presentation. 2 weeks before Evan's whisper, I noticed calendar invites stacking like storm clouds. War room, lockdown, final mirror. My name never on them. I asked our scrum master. "Probably just exec syncs," she said. Then she looked down like she'd already said too much. I started staying later. Not to catch them, but because I wanted to be in the same building as my work when it mattered. Nights blurred into a pattern. Badge swipe, elevator hum, my screen's pale glow in an empty floor. I built like a monk in a temple, quiet, methodical. And every so often, Evan would show up. Late night hoodie, tired smile, some tip about what not to say or when to leave. Always right before something happened. Always at the edge of coincidence. But that week, something sharper cut through the routine. I saw a ticket in procurement marked Data bridge, license, pending release. It had my name on it. The connector we'd been building required that license, and policy said it could only be activated with a CFO signed request. I had initiated it 6 weeks ago. The CFO's assistant had signed. The license was scheduled to release the morning of launch. It wasn't optional. Without it, the connector was dead. That's when the pieces started aligning. If the VP wanted to demo early, he needed that key. But he couldn't have it yet. Unless he didn't care. Unless he thought he could fake it. Bypass the gate. Bluff through a demo long enough to grab credit and worry about the fallout later. And who better to prepare me to look the other way than the coworker who had been teaching me to trust him all year. The Slack message arrived at 11:58 p.m. VP, push your repo to the master mirror now. We need redundancy. It wasn't a request. It was a command typed in casual tone, like someone ordering pizza. My cursor hovered. My heart didn't pound. I was past adrenaline. It felt like a switch flipping from foggy suspicion to certainty. I looked at the war room calendar invite again. Evan's name was right there, one of the attendees. He had told me he wasn't invited. He had looked me in the eye and lied. In that moment, trust didn't just break, it inverted. Every tip he had given me became evidence. Every favor became setup. Every whispered warning became a breadcrumb, leading me exactly where they wanted me. Calm, blindsided, unprepared to fight. But I wasn't unprepared. Not this time. Because while they were planning to steal my project, I'd already built its shadow. The paper trail, the audit logs, the compliance digest. Not dramatic, not glamorous. Just truth written in places they couldn't erase. And when truth collides with ambition, only one of them leaves the room standing. I stared at the Slack message until the typing indicator blinked and disappeared. Then I closed the window, saved my notes, and waited for the sound of the elevator doors. They arrived earlier than Evan promised. At 11:12 p.m., the elevator chimed, and the air shifted before the doors even slid open. You know that moment at work when a group walks in like they own the building? That was it. The VP led the pack, perfect hair, tailored blazer, phone in hand as if even theft needed to be scheduled. Behind him trailed the IT lead, shoulders tense, and a security guard whose badge clinked against his belt. Evan was there too, half a step behind, pretending to belong and not belong all at once. Redundancy check, the VP announced like a magician unveiling a trick. We're mirroring the repo to Goldmaster, just precaution. Precaution? That word hit like a slap, because my whole job was precaution. I built walls, gates, notes, signatures, precautions against exactly this. And now it was their excuse to rip the work from my hands. I kept my voice level. It's already cloud-based. My machine isn't the only point of failure. The VP smile, the kind of smile that said he liked resistance because it gave him the chance to win. All the same, he said, turning to IT, let's start. The IT lad hesitated. His eyes flicked to mine like he was silently apologizing. Then he plugged in, fingers flying. Security posted himself 3 steps back, thumbs hooked in his belt loops. Bored, but watchful. The mirrored repo started to copy, percentage bars crawling across the screen like termites eating through wood. At 11:14, my inbox pinged, role changed, admin revoked, the neutral language of bureaucracy, like an obituary that forgets to name the cause of death. I wrote a line in my release checklist. 11:14 p.m., mirroring initiated by IT at VP's request. My admin access revoked. My hands didn't shake. They had no idea what I was recording in real time. Evan lingered in the doorway, hoodie hanging loose, hands shoved in pockets. He looked at me with that familiar, half-sorry expression, the one he wore whenever he fed me half-truths. I wondered how many times I'd mistaken that look for loyalty. Thanks for the heads up, I said without looking at him. His voice came out soft, practiced. I'm with you. I didn't answer. My audit pilot, a quiet, invisible watchdog, was already running. Every unauthorized change, every branch rule edit, Every SSO login was being hashed, time-stamped, and sent straight to Legal's archive inbox. They thought cutting me out meant erasing me. They didn't realize I had already written myself into the architecture. At 11:32, the VP clapped once, as if sealing a deal. Good. We'll take it from here. Get some rest. He didn't wait for my reply. He strode to the elevator with the IT lead and security. Chatting like this was just another late-night hustle. Only Evan stayed behind. He shuffled closer, like a friend waiting for absolution. Look, I told you because I didn't want you blindsided, he whispered. I finally turned to him. The monitors reflected in my glasses, casting my face in blue light. You were in the invite, I said. He froze. Just half a second too long. Then, yeah, but... I closed my laptop. We're done. His mouth opened, but the elevator doors slid shut down the hall, and he swallowed whatever lie he had cued. He walked out without another word, sneakers squeaking against the tile. Alone again, I triggered one last digest. Subject line: change control variants during release lockdown. Attached: the mirrored event, the role change, the repo copy. Sent to legal company. CC'd to my personal archive. Nothing dramatic, nothing emotional, just receipts. Then I rotated the procurement request for the data bridge license back to pending. Not sabotage, just policy. The license couldn't be live until the official launch, and without that license, their stolen build was a beautiful, useless shell. The clock rolled to 11:59, midnight, exactly the hour Evan had whispered. Only instead of blindsided, I was wide awake, watching. When I finally slung my bag over my shoulder and stepped into the stairwell, the hum of the servers echoed behind me like a warning siren only I could hear. They thought they had taken everything. What they didn't know was that they just strapped themselves to a bomb with my initials already etched into the fuse. The boardroom smelled like pastries and panic. Demo day, 9 a.m. sharp. The long walnut table gleamed under recessed lights, lined with coffee cups that no one drank from. The CEO sat at the head, flanked by the CFO and general counsel. Across from them, the VP, smiling like a man about to unveil a miracle. Evan lurked 2 seats down, flipping through slides he hadn't built. I slid into a chair near the wall, notebook open, pen ready. Not because I was invited, because legal told me to observe. The VP opened with charm. What you'll see today is the future of our platform. Seamless integration, faster onboarding, airtight compliance. He glanced at me as he said airtight. My stomach stayed still. I knew what was coming. He launched the build. The login page loaded smooth. The dashboard popped bright. Charts, graphs, placeholders, all fine. Then he clicked the regulated connector, Data Bridge. The screen blinked. A red banner appeared. External data access blocked. Compliance ticket incomplete. The silence that followed was louder than any alarm. The CFO leaned forward. The general counsel tilted her head. The VP chuckled nervously. Minor config, easily bypassed. He pulled open the console, typed a flag Evan had slipped in. Hard-coded. Dirty. He hit enter. For 2 seconds, the screen seemed to cooperate. Then the logs screamed. Integrity warnings flooded the console. The handshake request pinged the client sandbox. The client system refused, verifying the audit key that didn't exist. Handshake denied. The build froze. Cursor blinking. The VP's smile collapsed into something feral. Who approved this? The general counsel asked, voice flat as a blade. The VP stammered. It's a rollout quirk. We can demo from staging? No, the CFO cut him off. Who approved this deployment without the compliance key? That was my cue. I slid a printed packet across the table. Changelog digests. Commit hashes. Time-stamped branch rule edits. Approver IDs. SUPs. And the policy excerpt. Data bridge license requires CFO approval before activation. Ticket pending. The CEO turned to me. Did you do this? My voice was steady. I did my job. The general counsel scanned the papers, eyes narrowing. These show unauthorized edits to the release pipeline last night. Who made them? I didn't have to answer. The Audit Digest did. Every SSO ID, every timestamp, Evan's logins, the VP's branch overrides, each line a nail in the coffin. Evan shifted in his chair, color draining. The VP's jaw clenched. He looked around the room for allies and found none. The CEO tapped the table once, sharp. Demo's over. The room emptied in waves. Executives muttering, assistants collecting laptops, pastries untouched. The VP tried to follow, but the general counsel blocked him with a quiet, "Stay." Evan pretended to shuffle papers, then dropped them and sat frozen. I stayed seated, notebook open, hands calm. For once, I wasn't the one on trial. Legal escorted me to a side room, polite, quiet. "We'll need a full statement," they said, "and copies of your records." I handed over everything, the emails, the logs, the procurement ticket timeline. No speeches, no accusations. Just the truth, boring and brutal. Outside, through the glass, I saw the VP pacing like a caged dog. Evan hunched over, staring at his phone. The boardroom was empty now, but the wreckage hung heavy in the air. They had wanted to steal my project. Instead, they stole their own credibility. And the thing about credibility is, once it's gone, there's no patch, no hotfix, no overnight miracle. It's dead code. When legal closed their folder, they looked me in the eye. "We'll be in touch," one said, voice clipped but respectful. For the first time in weeks, I exhaled, and that's when my phone buzzed with a notification. An email from a name I hadn't expected, a partner firm, the one we'd been competing with for years. Subject line, "We'd like to talk about your future." Legal's interview room had no windows, just a clock that ticked too loudly. They asked for everything, copies of my release notes, the pilot audit digests, the procurement ticket history. I slid it across the table in a neat stack, page corners aligned. Years of being called over-documented, distilled into proof. The general counsel's assistant flipped through, nodding with the kind of tight-lipped respect that says, "You've given us the ammunition we need." At lunch, while legal stepped out, I checked my phone. The partner firm's email was short, professional, and devastatingly timed. "We followed your compliance work. If you're considering new opportunities, we'd like to formalize an offer." Attached. I opened the PDF. A base salary higher than I'd ever imagined, a signing bonus, and one line that mattered more than all of it. Governance lead. Launch integrity. They wanted me not in spite of my slowness, but because of it. My insistence on gates, on signatures, on not cutting corners, that was the value they were buying. The HR rep showed up that afternoon, crisp suit, rehearsed empathy. "Given today's events," she said, "we think it's best to separate. Mutual agreement. Of course, we'd appreciate your discretion." She slid an NDA across the table like it was a napkin. Before I could answer, legal reappeared. "We'll hold off on any agreements until the investigation concludes," they said, sharp as scissors. HR's smile froze, then cracked. By then the fallout was spreading. Clients had heard whispers about the failed demo. 2 of them emailed directly, requesting I join their calls. Not the company. Me by name. Relationship capital you can't fake. That night I went home, sat at my kitchen table, and wrote my resignation letter. Clean, professional, time-stamped, no accusations, just the truth. I was moving on. The next morning, chaos bloomed. The board froze the VP's authority. An internal diff showed Evan's late-night edits under the VP's SSO session. HR suspended both pending review. Slack channels buzzed with "What happened?" threads until IT cut them off. Meanwhile, my new firm moved fast. They announced my hire internally with a press release draft already in motion. Within days, one of our renewal clients, furious at the failed demo, issued a conditional contract to my new firm to rebuild the connector. Payment? Covered under a remediation clause the VP himself had signed months earlier. The company would pay us triple their original budget, just to fix their own mess. I didn't need revenge. Policy had done it for me. The same rules I'd been mocked for clinging to had become the blade. When HR finally called, it wasn't to scold me, it was to ask for a transition plan. I told them the truth. There was nothing left to transition. They had taken the project, gutted it, and burned it on stage. I hung up, closed my laptop, and for the first time in months, felt the weight lift. I hadn't stolen a thing. I hadn't sabotaged. I had simply done my job and walked away clean. The wreckage was theirs to own, and I had somewhere better to be. 3 weeks later, the investigation ended the way it always does when receipts outweigh charm. The VP was terminated for cause. No severance, no farewell email, just a calendar block called exit interview that vanished an hour later. Evan didn't even get that. He was escorted out after investigators caught him lying, first saying he hadn't touched the repo, then blinking when they showed him badge logs and camera timestamps. His name disappeared from Slack within minutes. By afternoon, his desk was empty except for a dead plant. I didn't watch them leave. I didn't need to. The satisfaction wasn't in seeing them punished. It was in knowing they couldn't rewrite what happened. My logs, my notes, my quiet slowness had spoken louder than their ambition ever could. Meanwhile, my new firm moved forward. We shipped the data bridge connector properly, fully compliant, faster than the old team had ever managed. The board, desperate to save face, announced a strategic partnership with us. The irony, my former employer now had to buy back my work at 3 times the cost, wrapped neatly in contracts they couldn't wriggle out of. On launch day, I stood in a new office, brighter, smaller, but mine. My badge clicked against the door, the kind of sound that feels like ownership. We pushed the connector live. Green across the board. Clients signed. No panic, no whispers, just clean execution. That night, as the city lights blinked through my apartment window, my phone buzzed. A direct message request. From Evan. Hey, heard you landed well. Congrats. Any chance you could put in a good word for me somewhere? I could really use the help. I stared at the message, not angry, not triumphant, just still. My cursor hovered over reply, then slid instead to archive. No words, no fight, just silence. I stepped out onto my balcony, breathing in the cold air. The city hummed beneath me, cars, horns, lives moving forward. For the first time in months, I wasn't bracing for the next sabotage, the next whisper, the next cut. The lesson sat heavy but clear. Trust the whisper, but verify the whisperer, and always, always keep the receipts.